And so we're just being with what is today, but not clinging to it, not grasping, just noticing and gently releasing on the out-breath. And for this evening's practice, I'm just going to recite the loving kindness phrases for us. And I'll say a line and just leave a space so that you can say it for yourself. And we'll just do this 3 times this evening. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be well and healthy. May I be safe from all inner harm and outer harm. May I be free. May I be happy and filled with well-being. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be well and healthy. May I be safe from inner harm and outer harm. May I be free. May I be happy and full of well-being. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be well and healthy. May I be safe from all inner harm and outer harm. May I be free. May I be happy and filled with well-being. And you can say these phrases for yourself, whichever ones you remember. And allow yourself to settle into the peace and ease. At some point it may just get quiet inside. If so, just let yourself rest in this quiet ease. If thinking begins again, simply come back to the phrases. Allowing them to wash you with loving kindness. again, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be well and healthy. May I be safe from all inner and outer harm. May I be free. May I be happy and filled with well-being. So hopefully that's helping you feel a little more centered, a little more soothed. So outside of all the political dramas that have been going on, I began this year with an invitation to take a journey together, a journey of unfolding and growing together. And we began with looking at our intentions, and I talked a lot about restorative intentions. And so this evening, I wanted to talk the next step, the next piece in this journey, and talk about how we practice. I wanted to talk about the attitude of practice that we carry going forward this year. When we often engage in practices of mindfulness or wanting to shift our mind, body, and heart, many times I find in the work that the work gets pulled into two kinds of threads. The first thread is that of improving ourselves, where we set out to improve ourselves. We're going to make ourselves better, get rid of our bad habits, those kinds of things. And the second way that I see us engage this practice is often can be an attitude of trying to get away from being human. So people talk about being enlightened or transcending our human mind, transcending our human condition. And what I've found in my many years of practice is that these two attitudes, needing to improve ourselves and trying to transcend our human condition, that actually they don't work, and that they're actually quite painful in the process of being on the path. So, when it comes to transcending human condition, I don't really know anybody who has done that. And I've sat with some pretty amazing teachers who have sat with amazing teachers. And what we often see is that, great spiritual teachers are very human, very, very human, When you talk to students who live with them and practice with them, they'll say things like, oh, I've seen that person be angry, or I've seen that person indulge, in something, even though they may preach not indulging in things, right? Sometimes you might see conditioning in certain teachers, for instance, like being conditioned into patriarchy. And so you'll see that sometimes, right, where women practitioners are saying, wait, if I'm with all these great, amazing, awakened people, how come we're still struggling with equal rights and things like that? So you can see the humanness in some of these places that try to talk about transcending humanness. Also, you'll hear people say we should transcend our ego. And the truth is, you can't transcend your ego. Your ego is just a natural part of being human. It's part of your mind's makeup. And we use our ego for things like organizing information, making choices. You couldn't make dinner without having an ego. So you couldn't talk without having an ego. And so I used to love, Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, there's no such thing as enlightenment wards, right? There's no special place where like you see enlightened people and they're kind of drooling and they don't function and they're just sitting in a corner somewhere. It doesn't happen. So the truth is we have egos, and we have them whether we are awake, and we have them when we're not. It's just how healthy is our ego. So we don't really transcend being human. It's how do we do with this practice and still be human, still be with what's real and true about this journey. When it comes to this improvement piece, I'm going to improve myself, stop smoking, lose weight, all these things. I remember I was on a 3-month retreat, and one of the first things the teachers said to everybody was, this is not a weight loss program. So if you came here to lose 20 pounds, it's probably not going to work. It's like you can see people striving to improve themselves. But when we do that, what ends up happening, and maybe you've seen this in your own practices, is that when you're trying to improve yourself or better yourself, what ends up happening is you end up getting very tight in your practice, right? There's a lot of judgment that can happen. Painfully, we end up with a lot of doubt. We start doubting our ability to actually do this. And what I find is that in that frustration, oftentimes people throw their hands up and, walk away from the practice for a period of time, walk away from their inner work. And so what I wanted to talk about tonight was the attitudes that I kind of put forward in going through in my own practice, and how I'd like to kind of orient our practice this year. Again, as part of this kind of restorative intention, right? Something that's real, that can sustain us for the long haul. So just wanted to share some attitudes that I carry and share with you, and that inform how I teach. So the first one is having an attitude that we can change, grow, and evolve. Really just holding an attitude like it is possible. If I stay with these practices and I do this work, I will see change. I will see really good positive change for myself and a decrease in my suffering, which is nice. What's important here is that people think often that our personalities are fixed, or the way we are today is the way we just are. And what neuroscience is starting to show us is that actually that's not true at all. That in fact, rather than being fixed, the things that we crave for are actually skills. Skills that can be developed. Even if you haven't developed them yet, you still can develop them. And so, just give me a second. It looks like there's some people that want to join us. So to that end, if we think about this as these are skills that we can learn, then, for instance, we can learn to trust again. We can learn to let go of our anger, or to process our fear in a different way where we don't have to get angry, or we don't have to overeat, or we don't have to hide under our blankets. It's possible to learn to love again, which is a really good one because a lot of people would love to have more intimacy in their life. It's possible to feel safe again. You can learn to feel safe again, even if you haven't felt safe for decades. And that's part of what I want to work with this year, is how do we feel safe again? How do we come home to ourselves? How do we love again? These kinds of things that people often crave. Yeah. It's possible to learn how to have joy again in your life. You know, if you've had your joy shut down and you just think, well, I can't go there. It's not true. You can learn to be joyful again. So this is all possible because many of you probably have heard that we have neuroplasticity in our brain. Our brain is learning, growing, and evolving all the way until our last breath. And so I just want to bring that attitude forward. What if everything that you're looking for is actually a skill that could be learned again? And you could have these things that you crave again. So I just want to flag that attitude, that that's possible for us. And I hold that attitude in my own practice. When it comes to doubt, I think I said this last week, what would it have been like, you know, if we were taught to have the attitude of just because I don't have it today doesn't mean I won't have it? What if we just had that attitude, just because I didn't quit smoking today, or I slipped again? What if we had the attitude of just because I didn't doesn't mean I won't? And we could just buoy ourselves up with that attitude. The second attitude that I bring to practice is that of loving kindness. You know, this journey is a long one, and having an attitude of acceptance and loving kindness towards ourselves keeps us in good stead to keep going, particularly when we have slips and we fall back. You know, an attitude of loving kindness accepts that it's okay to be human. It accepts that we will make mistakes and we will fall. And when we have an attitude of love towards ourselves, then we're not so undone by those slips and those backslides. You know, I remember one particular teacher who I love, Suzuki Roshi, and he had a very simple phrase: begin again. Simply begin again. And I say that to myself at least once a day, if not 10 times a day. You know, so I'll just have a moment, something, you know, I swore I wasn't going to have that extra potato chip or whatever it was I was not going to do. I'm mindful for a moment. I've lost it. I'm looking at the empty bag. And I just stop and go, begin again. Just begin again, Maureen. Very gentle, no judgment, no anger. You know, the nature of our brains is that we're wired for efficiency. And as part of that efficiency, we have these big fatty dendrites that are like big conduits for certain thoughts and energy. And so our brains are wired with this familiarity of patterns. And so when you're stressed, it's really easy for your brain to fall back into one of those big fat patterns. And so it's going to happen. But what if we just let that be normal? It's just normal that our brain did that. Oh yeah, I did that again under stress. Okay. And so this attitude of loving kindness towards ourselves. Another attitude that I bring is the importance of self-care. So not just we love ourselves as we are or when we're making a mistake, but that we actually have an attitude in this practice that we aim ourselves towards increasing self-care. And it's not with a pressure, and it's not with a have to. It's with a sense of joy and a sense of nourishment. And so I invite you today and throughout this year that you create and cultivate permission for yourself to do the things that nourish you and feel really good. So, for instance, one of the ones I talk about is going outdoors. I really find that being in the big sky and out in nature, seeing the snow or the rain or the sunshine, really washes us clean of whatever our stressors are for the day. Doing practices like the one we just did, loving kindness, where you might sit and make that a formal practice for yourself, even if it's just 2 minutes a day, where you just maybe start your day. Maybe you don't get out of bed without saying those phrases for yourself first. May I be filled with loving kindness today. May I be peaceful and at ease. And just notice what that does to that first 5 minutes of getting out of bed. It might shift your whole day, you know? Other nourishing practices are things like gratitude practice. Taking a moment to just name gratitudes. I ran into a friend of mine who is a healer, beautiful curandera from Mexico, and she just had so much joy in her face. And I just said, "You look radiant today." And she just said to me, "How could I not be? It's all gratitude." And she just walks the earth all day in a practice of gratitude for herself. And even as we spoke, and we were just talking about various things in the world, I could hear her mind she just had this groove where she would just slip and say, "Yes, but, I'm also really grateful for this." And so it just became part of her fabric, this attitude of gratitude. Yeah. Favorite hobbies, whatever it is that nourishes your heart and soul. Reading a book. Give yourself an hour to read a book, And once we do that, or exercise, whatever it might be, once we do that, I often talk about in the neurobiology how important it is to anchor that experience in ourselves. So whether you go outside, do gratitude practice, exercise, to take that 30 seconds to a minute to just breathe it through your whole body. I don't know if you've ever exercised and then stop and breathe it through your whole body, or be mindful right after exercising. It's a wild trip. It's awesome. So there's some head nods. Some people are like, "Yeah, I've done that. It's pretty cool." So I really invite you to do that. You finish your swim, and before you jump out of the pool, stop and just 30 seconds, breathe it through your whole body and just watch what happens. Or a moment of seeing beauty, breathe it through your whole body. So this attitude of nourishment is so important. Just taking a moment. Mindfulness is good too. Taking a pause is good. The other attitude that I bring to my practice is that it has to work in real life. It has to work in real life. I know so many people who have a practice where they take their practice away from their life. Either they go to church or temple, they sit on their cushion, and they have all this deep practice, but then they get up off their cushion. It's as if they're two separate things, right? And what I find is that we don't really find transformation in our life unless we bring it into our real life. And so there's a number of ways to do that. There are a number of ways that I do it. One is that I use these practices during moments of stress. So if I'm having a hard day, I stop, I might breathe out tension, do loving kindness practice, whatever your practice is. I stop and I do it in moments of stress. And it's so powerful then, because you get to see, oh, this works. It gives you confidence to keep going forward, right? The other thing that's really important is to practice in ordinary moments of life. Most people don't think about doing this, but I try to, at least a few times a day, just make a little nod towards practicing during an ordinary moment of life. So cutting the apple or tomato, or driving. What's it like if you're driving and you just stop and do loving kindness for yourself as you're driving? Or you breathe out tension as you're driving. There's somebody in our group, I asked permission to share this and was told, yeah, it was okay to share. There's somebody in our group who called me and said, you know what I've been doing, and it's really amazing, is I've been doing ordinary things like washing dishes. And then I listen to you do the sit that we do. So I have the recordings up, and so you could just play the recording. And so this person washes dishes and listens to me say, so notice how your body is in this moment, allowing whatever here is temporary, breathe out any tension. And this person contacted me and said, wow, it was really powerful to do the sit while I was just doing ordinary life. And so I invite you to try that. Maybe pull up one of the recordings, start with a little meditation while you're walking in the woods or washing dishes or mopping your floor. And what's it like to just breathe out, let go of tension, arrive in emptiness or arrive in essence and breathe into that quiet and become the quiet. Meanwhile, the mop is still going. Yeah. I was practicing it the other day while I was shoveling. I've had much shoveling to do. If you live in Durango, you have probably had much shoveling to do. And so I would just be out there feeling and breathing and practicing with shoveling. So doing it in real life is really important. I find that doing it in real life is kind of like where the rubber meets the road, and the transformation is powerful because I haven't made this separation. It's while I'm sitting at the dining room table and my family is bugging me. It's while I'm sitting at the dining room table and I'm just bugging myself. It's like, calm down, Maureen. You're the one agitating everybody, right? So real life practice is really important in this journey. Retreats and things like that are beautiful and powerful. And if you have an opportunity to go on those kinds of experiences, I highly recommend it. We can get incredible depth when we do retreat practice. But a lot of us don't have the time or money or inclination to do that. And nor do I believe we need to do that in order for us to see the fruits of our practice, particularly if we do real life practice and we cultivate an attitude to kind of stay up on the horse. Yeah. And we'll do some of that deepening this year. We'll definitely do some of that. One last thing in terms of my orientation, and I've said this before. In my own practice, I came to see for myself that concentration practice didn't really get me there. It was great on retreat. It's beautiful when you can do it. But what I found was that I had a lot of old stories, inner child issues, all kinds of stuff, those voices in your head that kept coming up. So no matter how many times I tried to concentrate on breathing and staying focused in the present moment, still my mind would erupt with all kinds of busyness. And so I shifted my practice years ago into one of focusing on releasing the obscurations and the blocks and the difficulties that keep us from accessing our essence or our inner peace. And when I did that shift in my own practice, I saw my mind really have some incredible fruits of practice. Rather than trying to keep all that noise at bay, when I actually turned and faced and began releasing all of the afflicting formations that were kind of coming up, everything started to settle inside. What I found was that the peace and quiet is always there in the background. It's just hard to access because of all the noise that we have in our mind. So I often orient my practices towards dealing with the noise and releasing the noise and healing ourselves. And then I find that the peace and ease is much more easily accessed. In fact, it's all that's left after we've released the difficulties. And you'll see that in the way that I teach just even our sit at night, to start with what is, notice it's temporary and allow it, and gently release it. We're not clinging on it, we're not perseverating on it, we're not chewing on it. Just, it is, and allow it to go. It is, and we allow it to go. And here we empty out and find, oh, there's this quiet that's deep down, that's been there all day. I just didn't touch it. So, in this coming home, it's not a sprint, right? It's an unfolding journey. And so these attitudes that I'm talking about tonight, whether it's acceptance, loving kindness, nourishment, allowing to be normal and human, these are the attitudes that allow us to go the distance. If we're pressured and we're trying to hurry up and fix something or get rid of something or get rid of a part of ourselves, it doesn't work. That attitude itself is suffering. That's kind of suffering on top of suffering. And it actually gets us to abandon our work. So, just as an experiment for a moment, I'd like to invite you to just close your eyes for a moment and just take a breath, kind of let go of what I've been saying for a moment. Again, no need to hold on to it. There's always a recording. And I invite you to think back 20 years ago and just hold in your mind for a moment, who were you 20 years ago? How much have you changed from that person? And would you have dreamed that you would be like this now, back then? Chances are you're very different from the person 20 years ago. This is what I mean by an unfolding journey. Most of us could never imagine that we would be here today. You can open your eyes if you haven't yet. So much change is possible when we have the right attitude that allows us to stay the path. And what are we aiming for? You know, it's interesting. My sister's birthday was this week, and so we had a big family Zoom meeting. And at the end of the Zoom meeting, she said, okay, for my birthday present, this is what I want. I want everybody on the Zoom call to tell me, how did you get happy in your life? How did you finally get happy? What brought you happiness? And by the way, tell me one more thing you like about me. So that was great. That was her birthday present. So, and this, Zoom call was filled with many different ages. The youngest was 23 and the oldest were in their 60s, close to 70. And I just want to read to you some of the things that some people said. So and these are people who are older. They suffered a lot when they were younger, right? They've sobered up and they've figured it out, a lot of them by now, right? So I just want to name some of the things they said. Surround yourself with good-hearted people and do service. Another said, listen deeply to others and always be willing to be touched by what they say. Another said, be willing to be vulnerable, for it deepens connection with others, especially important people in your life. Someone else said, listen to your heart and be true to your heart. Don't let people push you off what's true for your heart. Another said, accept what's happening in this moment, in every moment. Another said, let go of your fears every day. When you do, life gets bigger and more joyful. And someone else said, know what you want and then keep refining it until you get there. So those are just some of the things that everyone was sharing. And when I sat back and listened to all that wisdom coming from all those different people that had had so many different journeys, what I realized that they were all talking about was the undefended heart. How to cultivate an undefended heart. You want to know what brought me the greatest happiness? Cultivating an undefended heart. And so I want to invite you to that possibility, that as we do this work together and practice together this year, that we create the practices and we put in the time and the love and the effort, that by the end of the year, we have more of an undefended heart. That you're closer to loving the way you want to, feeling safe, being true to your heart, living out your potential, your dreams, being deeply connected with the earth and other people and animals, and whatever else you dream. So I hope this is of service to you and helps. I hope you might be a little enticed or interested in joining me on this journey. And and then once we have it, that we can show up for others. And it just ripples out. I'm reminded of this story of a beautiful practitioner. Some of you may have heard of her. Her name was Deepama. She was an Indian woman who was enlightened and amazing. And she, on purpose, moved into a apartment building in Calcutta. And for any of you who aren't familiar, Calcutta is a very difficult place in India. I've had friends who say, yes, I've stepped over bodies just walking down the street. I mean, there's a lot of poverty and difficulty and pain there. And when she moved into this apartment building, it was filled of fighting and all kinds of horrid things were happening, rapes and all kinds of things were happening. And they said that within 6 months of her just living there, the entire building calmed down and came together and became a community. And it just started with this one little woman. She was about like 4'8", like really tiny little woman. And she would just be in her essence. And she would just be available with an undefended heart and love people and show up and deeply listen. Probably all the things that are on that list I just read you. And by doing so, she touched everybody around her. And everybody was called to something better. And people said it was absolutely transforming to watch how the whole community changed. So, if we do our practice, may we ripple out that way as well. And so with that, let's take a moment for a mindful moment where we just share our intention to not cling and hold on to all this yummy for ourselves, but for the whole world. So I invite you to just close your eyes for a moment. So may our practices, our deep listening, and our willingness to open our heart to this unfolding journey, may it bring fruition to our own practice. And may it also ripple out beyond us to the world, to all beings, so that all beings know well-being, health, love, and an undefended heart. So thank you, everybody. If you would like to practice with one of the recordings, you can just go to fallon-cyr.com and get a link to one of the recordings. And thank you for your practice. Thank you for your practice. Yeah.